We actually talk a lot on this show about the half-life of fame.
Right, yeah, the whole decay process.
Exactly. Like in physics, a half-life is just the time it takes for a substance to decay. But in global pop culture, that decay is just notoriously brutal.
Oh, it's ruthless.
Someone has this huge breakout hit, they are everywhere for, I don't know, 18 months, and then they just kind of fade into the background.
The culture just completely moves on without them.
Right, the algorithm demands fresh faces. So, there's this underlying assumption that reaching the absolute pinnacle of an industry is the hardest part.
What's a classic hero's journey, All the focus goes into the ascent. You endure the elements, outmaneuver the competition, and eventually you finally plant your flag at the summit.
But the reality is, planting the flag is really just day one.
Right.
What happens next is gravity. The elements start tearing at you, and there is this endless line of hungry, highly trained climbers coming up right behind you, desperate to knock you off that tiny peak.
And staying at the summit for even a year is an incredible statistical anomaly.
It is. But today, we are unpacking a staggeringly different reality for this deep dive. We're looking at what it takes to conquer a hyper-competitive, billion-dollar global industry, plant your flag at the absolute #1 spot, and just refuse to come down.
For over a decade.
Over a decade.
Which completely flips our entire understanding of how modern entertainment works. Because resisting the gravity of shifting trends, new technologies, and entirely new generations of consumers, that requires a completely different set of mechanics than that initial climb.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have a highly rigorous set of data sitting in front of us, and our mission today is to decode the mechanics of sustained, absolute dominance.
Yeah, we really want to figure out how this level of longevity is even possible in the 2020s.
Exactly. And to see what lessons you, listening right now, can extract for your own career or passions about never, ever resting on your laurels.
And we should clarify right out of the gate that we aren't, relying on internet chatter or fan-driven Twitter polls here.
Oh, absolutely not.
We are looking at the 2026 Overseas Hallyu Reality Survey.
Right. And just to give you a sense of the weight behind those words, this isn't some magazine popularity contest.
No, not at all.
This survey is conducted and announced by the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism, working directly alongside the Korea Foundation for International Cultural Exchange.
So we are talking about official, government-level auditing of a country's most valuable cultural exports.
It is essentially a geopolitical temperature check on the Korean wave.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And the big reveal from this massive audit, according to Minho, actor Lee Minho has ranked #1 as the most preferred Hallyu actor for the 13th consecutive year.
Wow.
Right. He has completely dominated the actor category across 30 different countries worldwide.
13 consecutive years. I really want to emphasize what a geological era that is in the entertainment industry.
It's an eternity.
It really is.
Yeah.
The global machinery is specifically designed to churn out the quote-unquote next big thing every few months. To hold the top spot for that long, you aren't just a celebrity anymore.
You become an institution.
Exactly. You become a structural pillar of the industry itself. It's why the survey data essentially frames his trajectory as an unstoppable myth and outright refers to him as a living legend.
I hear a phrase like living legend, and my immediate instinct is to look for the math to back it up.
Sure, you want the data.
Because to truly grasp the magnitude of a 13-year reign, we have to look at the methodology. The data we're looking at was collected recently from November 13th to December 12th, 2025.
Okay.
And the sheer scale of this is just staggering. They surveyed 27,400 people.
Which, from a statistical standpoint, is a massive sample size for a cultural survey.
Right.
Usually a few thousand people are more than enough to model a national trend.
Massive. And it's spread across 30 different overseas regions. This isn't a situation where a dedicated core of superfans figured out how to, spam an online voting button.
No, you can't game a government survey of this size.
Exactly. Surveying nearly 30,000 people globally with strict government oversight makes this an international pop culture census. But here is the detail that actually stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, what's that?
It's the demographic spread. They polled people aged 15 all the way up to 59.
What's fascinating here is the sheer psychological divide between those two ends of the spectrum.
I honestly don't even understand how it's possible. I mean, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
A 15-year-old and a 59-year-old agree on almost nothing culturally. A 15-year-old in 2026 consumes media through, 15-second micro trends and rapid-fire streaming.
Right, their attention span is totally different.
Exactly. While a 59-year-old has lived through multiple distinct eras of global entertainment and likely prefers traditional long-form narrative pacing. So how does one human being capture both of those demographics as their number one choice?
It requires an incredibly rare dual appeal mechanism. Let's think about the timeline here.
Okay.
A 15-year-old today was a toddler when this 13-year reign began. They didn't grow up with his early foundational hits.
Oh, that's true. They completely missed that era.
Right. They're likely discovering him through massive, high-budget streaming originals, where he might be playing a complex, morally ambiguous character.
So to the teenager, he's basically a brand new, highly relevant prestige actor.
Precisely. Meanwhile, the 59-year-old has watched his entire career trajectory unfold.
Ah, so they have the history.
Yes. To them, he represents the classic, sweeping charisma of traditional leading man cinema, combined with the nostalgia of the shows that first introduced them to Korean dramas years ago.
So he is functionally providing two completely different psychological experiences to two different generations simultaneously.
Exactly. When you analyze the survey criteria, it all boils down to this concept of irreplaceability.
Irreplaceability.
You cannot be a passing aesthetic trend and capture the 15 to 59 demographic. You have to offer genuine foundational substance.
It makes you realize that knowing who is voting leads us directly into where they are located. Because looking at the geographical breakdown introduces a totally fascinating paradox in the numbers.
The geography really illustrates the global sweep of the modern Korean wave.
It does. If we look at the data collated by Minho's.
And for those who might not know, Minho's is essentially this massive, highly organized, global fan community and database.
Right. They track his metrics and global footprint with forensic precision. It's wild. But anyway, according to them, his dominance isn't localized at all.
Not even a little.
He didn't just win his home region. He swept the #1 spot in the Asia-Pacific, the Americas, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. It is a completely borderless presence.
Which speaks to a universal emotional resonance that translates across entirely different cultural values and languages.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
And I have to push back on the data just a little bit here, because on paper, it looks like a contradiction.
How so?
Well, the survey tracks recent trends over the last 5 years, right? And it points out that the popularity percentage for the #1 actor actually fluctuated. It peaked at 9.3% in 2021, and then it settled at 7.1% in 2025. Now, if I'm running a company and my market share drops by over 2%, I am calling an emergency board meeting.
Oh, absolutely. The alarms are sounding.
Right. So I have to ask, does this dip mean the momentum is finally slowing down, or is there a different mechanic at play here?
It's a very natural assumption to make, but it's actually completely counterintuitive until we look at the mechanics of the global market itself.
Okay, lay it on me.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at what historically happened to the Korean entertainment industry between 2021 and 2026.
Oh, right. It didn't just grow. It fundamentally rewired global pop culture.
Exactly. In the early 2010s, when this 13-year reign began, the global market for Korean dramas was a large but relatively contained pond.
Right.
By 2026, it is an ocean. The overall market has become fiercely, densely saturated. Billions of dollars in foreign investment have poured in.
Yeah, the streaming wars changed everything.
Completely. There are infinitely more streaming platforms, exponentially more projects being funded, and a massive, relentless influx of heavily marketed new talent being pushed to global audiences every single day.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Holding a 9.3% share of a smaller, less crowded market is a great achievement.
Sure.
But maintaining the absolute #1 rank while only holding 7.1% of a massively expanded, fiercely competitive global market, that is arguably a much, much greater feat of endurance.
It's like being the #1 runner in a local marathon of 1,000 people. You're way ahead of the pack.
Right.
Then 5 years later, you're still the #1 runner, but now the race has 50,000 elite, globally trained runners.
Yes.
Your relative distance from the rest of the pack might look smaller on paper, and your percentage of the total runners is different, but you are still crossing the finish line first against exponentially harder odds.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The survey breaks down the regional popularity to reflect this, showing the Asia-Pacific region at an 8.0% preference, followed very closely by the Americas at 7.4%.
Wow.
Even with the slight mathematical fluctuation of an exploding market, maintaining the #1 rank means his absolute dominance is totally intact.
That makes total sense.
It highlights this status of being an unrivaled icon of K-culture. He is maintaining his position while the tide of the entire industry rises dramatically around him.
The ultimate fluctuation paradox. The slice of the pie gets slightly smaller only because the pie itself became a 10-story wedding cake, yet he's still the one sitting at the very top.
Exactly.
But that brings us to the core of this deep dive. Because surviving that kind of extreme market saturation shifting global trends, new technologies, and an endless parade of new stars for 13 years requires more than just resting on your past successes.
You don't stay at the summit for a decade by standing perfectly still. If you freeze, the gravity of the industry will eventually pull you down.
And we see it happen all the time. Someone finds a formula that works, and they just repeat it until the audience gets bored.
It's the safest bet until it isn't.
Right. But to sustain this kind of dominance, you have to constantly reinvent the reasons why people put you at the top in the first place. When you look at the analysis of his career trajectory, the defining characteristic is this idea of unceasing evolution.
Unceasing evolution. It implies a very conscious, highly deliberate refusal to stagnate.
Let's talk about the how of that. Like, how does an actor actually execute unceasing evolution?
What?
Because we actually have a concrete example of what that looks like right now. The tracking data highlights his upcoming move. Based with Minho's D, he is taking on the role of a character named Young Il in a film called Assassination, or Assassinations, which is set to be released this year.
And this is where the mechanics of acting choices become really vital to understand. When you are the undisputed #1, the safest, most lucrative route is to play the hits.
Stick to what works.
Right. If the global audience loves you as a glamorous, wealthy, romantic lead, the industry will offer you variations of that exact same role forever.
The golden handcuffs of a comfort zone.
Exactly. But stepping into a project like Assassination and taking on a role that is described as having a deepened narrative and infinite spectrum, that signals a deliberate pivot.
It's a whisk.
A huge risk. It means stripping away the familiar, safe aesthetics. It usually involves choosing roles that are physically demanding, morally ambiguous, or structurally complex.
You're shaking up the formula.
You work with different directors, you change your physical presence, your vocal cadence. You intentionally choose complexity over safety to stretch your own boundaries.
It reminds me of how we view legendary musical artists.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about a truly iconic band that has been around for decades. There is a massive, highly visible difference between a legacy act and a reinventing artist.
Okay, yeah.
The legacy act just goes on tour endlessly, playing their greatest hits from 20 years ago. The audience goes for the nostalgia, they buy the t-shirt, and they go home.
It's a comfortable experience.
Exactly. But a reinventing artist challenges their audience. They change their sound, they experiment with new genres, and they take a massive risk with every single new album.
And the market responds to that risk. Nostalgia might keep a legacy act in the top 10 for a while, but it won't keep you at #1 across 30 countries for 13 years.
No way.
Relevance does that. Expanding your spectrum means you are constantly giving the 15-year-old and the 59-year-old a brand new reason to choose you today, not just remembering why they chose you yesterday.
And this is where I want to bring this right to you, listening to us right now.
Yeah, let's connect it back.
Because looking at this 13-year reign, looking at the sheer unyielding stamina of it, it's not just about an actor's filmography. It really serves as a blueprint for sustained excellence in whatever ecosystem you operate in.
It's universally applicable.
It makes you think about professional plateaus, doesn't it? We all have our greatest hits at work or in our personal projects. It's so easy to comfortably sit on a plateau because you worked incredibly hard to climb up there 5 years ago.
Right, you feel like you earned the rest.
But are you relying on your past momentum? Or are you looking for your own version of that new complex role, your own assassination, to force yourself out of your comfort zone?
That's the real test.
It's the professional equivalent of deciding to learn a completely new, incredibly difficult coding language when you are already the top dog at the old one.
It's the fundamental difference between achieving success and sustaining mastery.
Mastery. I love that word for this.
Because mastery is an active state. You have to be willing to be a beginner again in a new set of skills, even when you are at the top of your field. The analysis of his career specifically points to a new chapter where he will continue to expand without settling for the top.
Settling for the top, I can't stop thinking about that phrase.
It's powerful.
Because treating the top as a resting place is the greatest trap of success. The top isn't the end of the journey, it is literally just a new baseline.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all these threads together from this massive 30-country government audit,
We are looking at a 13-year reign at the absolute pinnacle of global entertainment.
right. It is backed by hard data spanning generations that functionally consume media in completely different universes.
And this reign is driven not by complacency or, relying on a handsome face, but by a proven, unwavering commitment to taking on complex new challenges.
Evolving constantly and expanding his own narrative footprint.
It perfectly validates that title of living legend. Because true irreplaceability isn't a crown you are handed once and get to wear forever.
It's a lease.
Yes, it is a lease that you have to renew over and over again through continuous evolution. When the global market explodes and the tide rises, you don't just hold your breath and hold your ground.
No, you expand your spectrum so that you remain the most compelling, structurally sound figure in the new landscape.
You don't just defend the flag, you build a whole new mountain right on top of it.
I love that.
And looking at this blueprint, this raises an important question, one that I think ripples out far beyond just one actor or one fan base.
Oh, I'm listening.
We've just analyzed the mechanics of how a single individual can dominate a fast-paced, fiercely competitive, fundamentally trend-obsessed global industry for 13 years simply by constantly evolving and embracing unwavering challenges.
Right.
But what happens when an entire industry or an entire culture's global export strategy fully internalizes and adopts that exact same model of relentless, borderless reinvention?
Oh, wow.
If this level of unceasing evolution shifts from being a personal choice to becoming the absolute industry standard, what will the landscape of global entertainment look like 13 years from now?
Wow. That is an incredibly exciting and maybe slightly terrifying thought to leave on. The bar isn't just being raised. The entire concept of what the bar even is evolving in real time.
It really is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you take a hard look at your own spectrum this week and find a completely new way to expand it.
Absolutely.
Don't settle for the top. Keep climbing, keep evolving, and we will see you next time.